These are the Medi-Cal rule changes that removed asset limits for California seniors, and they are already reshaping who qualifies for coverage, how eligibility decisions are made, and what financial exposure can still exist later. This video explains what changed, when it changed, how the rules now work, why so many seniors misunderstand them, and how these changes can still affect families years down the line. For most of its history, Medi-Cal created fear among older Californians. Not fear of doctors, not fear of hospitals, but fear of qualifying at all. The system did not simply ask whether someone needed care. It asked how much they had left after a lifetime of working, saving, and planning. And if the answer was more than the state allowed, help was denied. Under the old rules, the asset limits were unforgiving. A single senior could not have more than $2,000 in countable assets. A married couple could not exceed $3,000. These numbers were not symbolic. They were real barriers that blocked access to healthcare. Savings accounts counted. Small emergency funds counted. Modest balances that barely covered unexpected expenses counted. For many seniors, this meant they were technically too wealthy to qualify, even while struggling to pay bills. The result was a system that punished preparation. Seniors who planned responsibly often found themselves worse off than those who had nothing. Saving became a liability rather than a safety net. Healthcare decisions turned into financial traps. People delayed care because they were afraid of disqualifying themselves. Others were told to spend down savings just to reach eligibility. Some burned through money quickly, not because they wanted to, but because the system required it. This distorted retirement planning. It created stress late in life. It forced people to make choices that felt backwards. That reality existed for decades, and it shaped how seniors viewed Medi-Cal. The program became associated not just with healthcare, but with loss. That is why the change that began in January of 2022 mattered so much. California launched a phased plan to eliminate the Medi-Cal asset test. This was not a single rule change. It was a gradual dismantling of one of the program's most feared features. The first step dramatically raised the asset threshold. Instead of $2,000, individuals were allowed to have up to $130,000. Additional allowances applied depending on household size. This was a seismic shift. It immediately opened the door for thousands of seniors who had been locked out simply because they had modest savings. For the first time, having a cushion did not automatically disqualify someone from care. The changes continued through 2022 and 2023. Each phase loosened restrictions further. Each adjustment moved the program closer to eliminating the asset test entirely. Then, on July 1st of 2024, the transition was complete. From that date forward, most Medi-Cal programs serving seniors stopped counting assets altogether. Bank balances were no longer examined. Retirement accounts were no longer scrutinized. Savings, in general, were no longer a barrier. This made 2025 the first full-year seniors across California experienced Medi-Cal eligibility without asset limits. For many people, this felt like relief. It felt like fairness. It felt overdue. Savings no longer blocked access to care. Planning no longer felt like a mistake. The old fear of being forced into poverty simply to receive medical help faded. But while one fear disappeared, another quietly remained. A state recovery did not go away. A state recovery allows California to seek repayment after a Medi-Cal recipient passes away, particularly for long-term care services received after age 55. This recovery generally targets assets that pass through probate. This rule survived every phase of the asset test elimination. And this is where confusion begins to spread. Many seniors assumed that removing asset limits also removed the state's ability to recover costs later. That assumption is understandable, but it is incorrect. Eligibility rules determine who qualifies for Medi-Cal. Estate recovery rules determine what happens after death. These are separate parts of the system. A senior can now qualify for Medi-Cal without spending down savings, and those same savings can still be subject to recovery later, depending on circumstances. This delayed consequence is what catches families off guard. During life, everything feels fine. Coverage is approved. Care is received. Savings remain intact. Nothing feels at risk. Years later, after a death, estate recovery enters the picture. Notices arrive. Probate begins. Questions surface. Families often encounter this for the first time when they are least prepared to deal with it. The policy did not suddenly change. Understanding simply did not keep pace with reform. California officials described the acid test elimination as a way to reduce administrative burden and increase access. Eligibility workers no longer need to track small financial changes or verify bank balances repeatedly. This simplification is real. It speeds enrollment. It removes barriers. It reduces paperwork. But simplification on the front end does not eliminate consequences on the back end. Estate recovery still exists. It still operates. And it still surprises people. Supporters argue the system is now fairer. Seniors no longer have to destroy savings to receive care. Dignity is preserved. Healthcare becomes accessible without financial ruin. Critics argue the burden has simply shifted. Instead of forcing seniors to spend down assets before care, the system waits until after death to recover costs. Both views reflect different priorities, and both are accurate in their own way. Another source of confusion is income. While asset limits are gone, income limits remain. Medi-Cal eligibility still depends heavily on income thresholds. This creates situations that feel contradictory. A senior with substantial savings but low income may qualify easily. Another with similar savings but slightly higher income may not. The system prioritizes cash flow over net worth, which surprises many people who assume assets and income are treated the same way. In 2025, all of these rules operate together. Asset tests are gone. Income rules remain. Estate recovery continues unchanged. The danger lies in assuming one change explains everything. Seniors who assume Medi-Cal is now consequence-free may make decisions without full awareness. Families who assume assets are fully protected may be shocked later. This is not about fear. It is about understanding. Healthcare decisions intersect with housing, savings, and family outcomes. Removing asset limits solved one problem, but it did not eliminate the need for awareness. The policy improved access. It did not erase responsibility. Supporters emphasize compassion. They argue seniors should not be punished for saving. They argue healthcare should not require poverty. Critics emphasize legacy. They argue estate recovery undermines the benefit by reducing what families can pass on. Neither side cancels the other. The biggest risk for seniors in 2025 is misunderstanding what changed and what did not. The acid test is gone. That is real. Estate recovery remains. That is also real. Ignoring either leads to poor decisions. Understanding Medi-Cal today requires separating eligibility from aftermath. Access from consequence. Relief from long-term impact. The rules are simpler when applying. They are still complex when life ends. That balance defines Medi-Cal in California today. The system no longer forces seniors to destroy savings to qualify. That is progress. The system still allows recovery later. That is reality. Knowing both is essential. Healthcare is not just about today's appointment. It is about how decisions ripple forward through time. That is why these Medi-Cal rule changes matter so much. They removed one fear while creating a new misunderstanding. Clarity is the safeguard. The acid test is gone. The program change. The consequences did not vanish. And that is what every California senior needs to understand.